So this past week was one of the busiest weeks that I've had in months, if not the last year. I had to cover for a coworker at work, another manager. So I'd essentially do my full-time duties day in and day out while also performing this other manager's duties, or at least as close to I could get as all of his duties, while still being present at home for a 7-month-old baby and a fiance, and still trying to go to the gym. What's crazy is I would have thought that by Friday, I would have felt run down and like, thank God that week is over. But the complete opposite happened. I felt fantastic at work. I was thanked multiple times by my boss for kind of taking the reins for somebody else's role. I was able to make the gym, do all these things, and show up here, continue making videos, which is, a goal of mine. So I knew that we had somebody from work, another manager, was going to be on vacation the whole week. And he prepped me a little bit. I had like a half a day or so, just kind of getting the lay of the land of what he does. He's a rental car manager. So, long story short, constantly checking for reservations, dealing with walk-in customers. You're kind of at the whim of the customer, which is a little different than what I do day in and day out. If I have a task that I have to complete, I can be asked, taken off that task and asked to do something else that's more immediate. But it's a little more rare that pulling me off of a task happens because a customer walked in the door. So I was, sort of thrust into his role, and he was available, via phone call and text message if I needed help. But one of the things that I noticed was I wasn't dreading, taking over for somebody else. I'm one of those employees. I'd rather be part of the solution than part of the problem. I want to be somebody that if people are opening the books, so to speak, or, kind of looking around the landscape of a company, they're like, regardless of whatever it is I do, I want to be considered somebody that is a valuable employee, right? An asset. I think most people are kind of sort of like that. At least I am now at middle age. That's kind of how I think. When I was 25, I was just full of piss and vinegar, and I don't think I really gave a shit about that. I just didn't want to be late. So I attribute it to a boss that I used to have in my nuclear career that used to always say, you should always be looking for work. And he didn't mean looking for a job. He meant when you were at work, looking for something to do. So I try to carry that, into what I do in my day in, day out work life. So I had made, peace with the fact that I'm going to be doing somebody else's job. And it's a good crew, good group of people that I was working with. So, honestly, kind of made it easy. But a few other things were happening sort of at the same time. Like I said, I wanted to continue with it's very important that I maintain some level of physical activity. I used to play basketball for really about 30 years. I just had to give it up very recently because of my knees. I had a scare, and with the baby wanting to sort of stay fit and active, chasing a toddler and potentially more than one child, I was like, I'm done with basketball. But lifting weights, getting my 10 to 15,000 steps a day, I've recently incorporated stretching and stuff. So going to the gym is a non-negotiable for me. So a few days a week, I'm knocking that out in the morning. Heading into the week, I knew that, I can't believe I'm going to say this, I had my work cut out for me. I just knew it was going to be busy. So it's not like I was blindsided by this. But there was something that did blindside me about the week that I'm going to get to a little bit later in this video. But, keeping up with my morning routine, I get up pretty early. I get up at 5 a.m. every day. Editing a few days a week or a couple days a week. I'll edit videos that if I shoot a video on a Sunday, I'm editing, that afternoon. But oftentimes when I shoot during the week, I edit in the mornings before work, over my coffee, before the baby gets up. So I knew that the week would be busy. It didn't disappoint. Oh, geez, that's a red light. So all this to say, I'm covering for somebody else at this time, trying to get as much of my own work done. My boss actually pulled me aside and asked me to do one or two kind of additional tasks, like ideas that he had. I was able to whip up some mock-ups of this graphic. He had some graphics ideas for the way we market certain vehicles. Not only was I able to keep this rental program going, or at least keep it afloat, I was able to like bring my laptop to the workstation, and in between, customers or in between phone calls or whatever, I was able to not only get these mock-ups done. He used the words, "Whoa, that's perfect." That always feels good. When my boss has no notes, that's pretty rare. So that felt fantastic. By the end of the week, he had pulled me aside 3 separate occasions to thank me for just sort of jumping in and going all in on covering for this other manager. I don't look for praise. I'm not looking for a pat on the back, but I think most people, it doesn't feel shitty when somebody's like, "Hey, you're doing a great job." Whether you need to hear it or not. To me, it's it can't hurt. So where I was really surprised was, I was, and covering for this guy, I was actually putting on a lot more steps each day. I like to track my steps just to see if I'm sitting too much at work or sitting too much anywhere. I like to keep it moving, so I just noticed naturally, without trying to take the occasional lap around the building, I'm 13,000 steps a day. So a few extra thousand steps. Point is, busy, physically tired when I got home. But the thing that didn't make sense to me was I started feeling better at the end of each workday. Not drained, not pissy, not like without patience, not testy, not withdrawn. I'm not going to say that I came home from work each day last week like I was shot out of a cannon, but I felt good. And each day that sort of stacked, and I was really surprised, because to me, it completely contradicted what I thought was going to happen. I was like, oh, this is going to be draining. I think I can handle it, but not much else is going to get done. And, I even warned Janelle, I said, I'm not going to be I'm not going to be worth much, when I come home. I'm going to try, but, I could be, pretty drained or get out late, stuff like that. But as the week went on, I actually told Janelle, and we were laughing because we both love the movie The Other Guys with Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell. And there's a scene in that movie where they bust Wahlberg down to like traffic cop duty. And there's this montage of him, directing traffic. But by the end of it, he's him and Will Ferrell talking, and he's talking about how much he loves the traffic duty. And it shows him like dancing and just being really good at it. And he kind of says as much, I enjoy it. I'm really good at it. There was a part of me last week that, I texted her. I was like, I feel like Wahlberg and the other guys, when he's on traffic duty. And I honestly don't think it was any one thing. If I had to guess, the overall productivity that I had throughout the whole week on multiple different fronts, I believe, is what caused the unexpected benefit of being so busy. I know there's a psychological sort of component to this that I am not well versed in, but I know that productivity and purpose for a lot of people can it's like a snowball that just keeps getting bigger and rolling downhill. And I attribute a lot of it to showing up here on this channel. And I made a video recently about that, like why I make videos that no one's watching, And I think regardless of the outcome there's something about, going to the gym is one thing, right? That's one thing that I do for my health, mental and physical, that I've been pretty consistent with over the last 23, 24 years. But that, for me, that only takes you so far. It's one piece of the pie. Having a job that you're super productive at, or you're getting a lot done, I think is another huge part of that pie. But the goal that I had to consistently show up for myself on this channel, or just uploading videos, recording videos, I think what I underestimated was the element of that would spill over into other parts of my life, right? So, you take over for somebody at work, I'm kind of rolling my eyes like the week before, going, oh, geez, this guy's going to be on vacation. I hope he's got his phone with him. This is going to be, could be a nightmare. Actually, that was about 2 weeks before he left. The week before he left, I was very productive with just making some videos. And the other stuff that I, try to make a priority in my life. And it's not that one thing, it's not that uploading, YouTube videos, made my day job easier. Actually, you know what? No. I think to a certain extent it did. And it's because when I have, a few different buckets of my life that I'm showing up in, whether as a father, whether as a partner, whether as an employee, whether as a manager, for me creatively, making videos scratches an itch that I've had since college. I haven't really talked much about it on this channel, but I went to art school with the intention of working in movies, whether it's as a filmmaker or, a DP or as a computer animator for CGI and stuff like that was my intention. And I got an associate's degree and I got into a 4-year college, but I wanted to take a break and I started working. I was going to take a year or two off. I actually had an advisor that highly recommended that. He said, go live your life for a little while before you go back to school. I'm like, all right, cool. And here I am, 47. I never went back. I don't regret it, but just to give you context, that scratching that itch of creating something, in this case, whether it's a time capsule of my life, where I am in my life, my daughter's life, my fiance Janelle's life, like her and I together, no matter what it is, hitting record and then hitting upload and getting into that rhythm, I gotta be honest, that it really has allowed me to step into work and just find ways to be more useful. There was a moment last week, and I'll I'll end with this. I'm not gonna say making these little YouTube videos did this, because Janelle's gonna absolutely throw the television remote at the TV when she sees this part. But we had a real gross trash situation outside of our place. I even bought a brand new barrel because I had auditioned all of these. I went to Home Depot, and I actually should have just recorded it. Auditioned all the barrels they had there, the outside trash barrels. And I'm looking for the one that has the tightest sealing lid, because I don't know if we've got cluster flies or whatever on the property, but there was just a shit ton of flies, even just outside. And we were finding them getting into our place, and we're like, why do we have so many flies? We don't leave food out. We're not, gross. We don't get stoned at night, fall asleep, and leave a half-eaten bowl of ice cream on the counter for 3 days. That's not who we are. I get this barrel, and I take the contents of the old barrel, fire it in there, and there's maggots. There's, it's not pretty, okay, as you can imagine. Well, the new barrel was full. I hadn't taken it out for a month, maybe more. I was just bringing trash to work. because I was really just not looking forward to opening up that barrel to see what was living in it, to get, to bag it up, to leave it on the curb for the trash pickup. So with all this happening last week, it's not a big deal, right? I'm not looking for a pat on the back. I just thought this was really interesting, and I was laughing about this. Last week, it was like day 2 or 3 of the week where I felt like I was stacking momentum, where I walked outside and I was like, I thought I needed help with this barrel because it was so heavy. I walked outside in the morning and I was like, you know what? Screw this. I went over there, I dragged this barrel over, I hoist it up, I throw it in the back of the truck, and I empty the contents at work. Come home, rinse it out, put a little bleach in there, make it nice. The point is, I'm not sure that trash barrel would have been emptied if I didn't consistently show up for myself in all of these other buckets. And again, I keep calling it stacking. It felt like I was stacking the momentum of the week. And it's weird because when I say it out loud, it doesn't, if I was writing all of this down, I wouldn't be like, holy shit, I did all this and this and this and this. But I did check a lot of boxes, some of them pretty minor, but many of them, a lot of boxes. Some of them, the performance at work, I'll take that as a relatively major thing. When your boss pulls you aside from what you're doing 3 times to thank you, that means a lot, It tells me, at least going and headed in the right direction. So my kind of main takeaway and where I'm going to leave this video is just, I feel like the last 10 days or so have really highlighted something that is important to my overall mental health. And not only my mental health, but I feel like, Janelle was saying this to me recently, when I'm productive then I feel like I have purpose. When I feel like I have purpose, I'm just a better human being to be around. And part of that, that formula from what I learned last week is going to be busting my ass at work, and always looking for something to do, to be helpful. Showing up for myself to include, exercise and making videos, and just time with my family. I think that's another component to this that I haven't really talked about much in this video, but is sort of part of it. And there's a theme that always comes up in a lot of my videos and will probably forever, is just the concept of balance, a balanced approach. Like I said, gym, making videos, taking photos, spending time with the family. We have a Saturday morning routine. We walk to a local cafe. We get an espresso, we get a coffee, croissant, whatever, with the baby, and, showing up to work, doing what I need to do there, putting systems in place so I'm productive there. All of that stuff makes me a better partner. All of that stuff makes me a better father. All of that stuff makes me a better son. So, I don't know. I just wanted to kind of like talk it out a little bit because, again, I was really surprised. I thought it was going to be hell week for me. And I ended up like kind of crushing it. And I don't talk about my performance in any capacity that way typically. I like to, I like cocky humor, but I'm not one of those guys that's like, yeah, fucking killing it. But I killed it. I knocked it out of the park. Any sports reference you want to throw there. All right. That's all I got.